Willkommen zu einer neuen Reaction. Heute wieder auf Twitch Live reagiert und wir werden uns heute mit der Forest Lore anlegen. Also der Forest und Sons of the Forest, ja, Spiele von End Night, nicht Entertainment, einfach End Night. Ich glaube, so heißt das Studio. Fertig. Ja, ein Spiel, Franchise, was jetzt zwei Teile aktuell hat, aber jetzt letzten Jahres bei den Game Awards Teil 3 announced hat mit einem sehr kranken Trailer, was war so UFO, Weltraum und dann Forest 3. Was? Aber ja. Und bevor das dann irgendwann dieses Jahr oder nächstes Jahr rauskommt, ich könnte mir vorstellen, es kommt vielleicht dieses Jahr im Early Access raus, wer weiß. Ähm, ja, werden wir mal die Lore ein bisschen uns anschauen, was da so gab. Also so ein paar Punkte habe ich verstanden. Also der Main-Punkt beim ersten ist, okay, wir retten unseren Sohn, nachdem wir mit dem Flugzeug abgestürzt sind, entdecken hier Kannibalen und irgendetwas so, machen so Experimente, schießen mit Absicht Leute ab im Flugzeug, um halt damit irgendwie Körper zu sammeln und alles so und wilde Experimente durchzuführen. Grob zusammengefasst. Sons of the Forest 2, es gehen irgendwie Menschen verloren auf einer Insel. Wir als der Sohn jetzt, also als Timmy, machen uns auf diese Insel in so einer Spezialeinheit, probieren die zu retten, stürzen wieder ab. Klassiker. Und entdecken, dass da halt auch Kannibalen wieder sind, sogar Dämonen irgendetwas, so auch kranke Scheiße auf Leute, Riesenbunker und irgendetwas so. Und irgendein Cube, die so eine goldene Stadt zeigt, die sehr modern Zukunft aussieht und so, ja, Alien-Technik vollgeladen ist. Und wahrscheinlich dann Teil 3 wir sehen werden oder so, I don't know. Und wir war kranke Scheiße. Und man sieht auch am Ende halt, wie der Vater immer mehr. Nee, ist Vater. Nee, Timmy selbst auch immer mehr mutiert. Den Vater sieht man actually am Ende des Spiels, wenn er im Flugzeug einen abholt, dann. Ja, ich glaube, das ist so grob zusammengefasst. Das sind so die Main-Punkte, wo ich mitbekommen habe. Und I guess, das werden wir jetzt mehr sehen. Also ich würde sagen, nicht lange herumgespackt. Gehen wir hier rüber und schauen, was hier die Story so enthält. So.
Sons of the Forest and its predecessor, The Forest,
So.
tell the story of a world that is full of intrigue
Das ist
and
zum Glück
mystery.
leider fast. Mensch, der
This
ist ganz
complex and
reacted,
chilling
ey.
tale requires an investigative eye to uncover, but it is worth the payoff. The complete story of the events in The Forest, those that occurred decades later in Sons of the Forest, as well as what happened in the years between, will all be covered in this video.
Bin ich mal gespannt. Aber deswegen sieht man halt die Bibel noch so verteilt über die Insel und so
The
Sachen
story
und
of the
religiöse
forest
Sachen.
begins sometime in the 19th century with the arrival of a band of Christian missionaries on a mission to establish a colony on a mysterious peninsula along the coast of Canada. Arriving on ships, they brought along Bibles, crucifixes, and Old World firearms. During their early days of exploration, the missionaries discovered an ancient and captivating artifact within a cavern at the bottom of the sinkhole.
Okay, ein uraltes und faszinierendes Artefakt. Das sieht nach dem Teil aus, wo man Timmy findet, sobald man halt ins Loch runtergeht.
The missionaries pondered this obelisk and about the ancient ones that created it. With time, the obelisk began to influence and mold the minds of the missionaries and their religious beliefs.
Okay.
As the missionaries' fascination with the ancient ones grew,
Ja, aber das sind 4 Blaupläne, die man in Teil 1 kann finden. Halt so eine Kirche, so ein Gleiter, so ein riesen Wachturm und so eine Rutsche eben für zu... Ja, rutschen, no shit.
their humanity declined. Fascination
Je mehr die Menschen vom Alten fasziniert werden, desto mehr nahm ihre Menschlichkeit ab. Das heißt, die wurden dann später zu den Kannibalen? Fragezeichen?
turned to worship, which turned to tampering. On at least one occasion, this tampering proved disastrous, resulting in a destructive wave being released from one of the Ancient One's artifacts,
Deswegen so viele Untote.
which
Okay.
scorched many in its path. Eventually, the once missionaries would start offering child sacrifices to the obelisk,
Oh boy.
and in turn, the obelisk would provide new and transformative life to the privileged dead. The unfiltered power of the obelisk would bring the dead back, not as
Aber als Mutanten.
humans, but as monstrosities. These creepy incarnations were exalted by the once missionaries, who themselves degenerated, taking on cannibalistic tendencies.
Voilà.
Soon enough, the bond between the cannibals and the artifacts they coveted grew so strong as to gain control over them. When competently wielded, one artifact could even be used to pacify the cannibals or alternatively whip them into a frenzy.
Okay.
As decades passed, the legends around the peninsula spread throughout the world. Folks from all walks of life would make their way to the peninsula for various purposes. Cave divers seeking adventure and film crews scoping out the perfect set.
Okay, Legenden.
Spelunkers in search of treasure and nature lovers just trying to get away from it all. Then there were the numerous reports of children going missing and a group of concerned missionaries that went looking for them following a trail of clues to the peninsula. All went to the peninsula and none were heard from again.
Ja, tot. Wahrscheinlich einer der Leichen, die man kann wahrscheinlich entdecken, aber man es nicht wissen würde, dass das halt einer von denen ist. Krank,
At the
okay.
turn of the millennium, Sahara Therapeutics, an American megacorporation, would assert its control over the peninsula with superior technology.
Ich wollte gerade sagen, das ist das Labor unten von denen, weil man zum Beispiel auf der Karte für ins Labor selbst steht ja Sahara.
Research facilities were constructed to house the two most prominent ancient artifacts in the area. Sahara's objective: merge the artifacts with modern technology to usher in a new era of scientific discovery and application.
The Scientist, okay, Chapter 1.
Dr. Matthew Cross began that day like any other. After his morning routine, he went down to the cafeteria to check in on his daughter, Megan.
Oh, die, wo wir später als Final Boss haben, auf Sons of Force, genau. In Forest 1, okay.
He deflated slightly at the sight of her in that wheelchair, a hopeful smile providing a small measure of comfort. Inwardly, Matthew cursed God or fate or whatever it might be that gave his only child a seemingly intractable degenerative disease.
No.
Seemingly, he thought, because he knew there was a way to cure Megan. There had to be, and the resurrection obelisk would be the key. Matthew was brought on by Sahara as the primary investigator for potential medical applications of the resurrection obelisk.
Etwas sagt mir, dass es nicht gut ausgegangen ist. Vor allem, weil seine Tochter wissen wir. Ich nehme an, dass das passiert, was da vorhin erwähnt wurde, von sie sind gestorben und dann wiederbelebt worden und aber halt so als Mutanten und das ist halt zumal bei seiner Tochter passiert.
Sahara suspected
Mit ihrem Spin-no-Jitsu da, Alter, oder ihrem Beyblade da.
many capabilities of the artifact, such as prolonging youth, curing disease, cloning, and even bringing back the dead.
Okay.
Given early observations that the obelisk primarily achieved these outcomes through genetic alteration and exerted the greatest effect on children, Matthew, a pediatric geneticist, was the perfect candidate to lead research efforts. Matthew never saw himself as a pious man, but he could appreciate the tale of Jairus. Like himself, Jairus had a daughter with an incurable disease. Yet, Jesus performed a miracle and saved the child, and, in some accounts, even raised her from the dead.
Okay.
This story resonated with Matthew. He would perform a miracle of his own and save his daughter from certain death. And that
I guess hat auch funktioniert, aber wahrscheinlich auf massive Kosten.
was how Project Jarius got its name.
Jarius, okay.
Sahara's motivation for funding the project was strictly monetary. That was
natürlich.
clear enough to Matthew. They could rationalize the sacrifice of children, albeit terminally ill children, to activate the resurrection obelisk. In their cold, calculating eyes, the death of one terminally ill child, giving long life to another, was better than a short and miserable life for both. Matthew wasn't concerned about the money.
Das kann ich vorstellen, ja.
As primary investigator, he would make sure that his daughter was the first recipient of this revolutionary treatment once they figured out how to prevent the side effects, that is. Unfortunately, early trials of using the obelisk on terminally ill children yielded conflicting results.
Heißt?
While they were no longer feeble and dying, it almost seemed as if the obelisk went too far. They were no
Interesting.
longer feeble.
Das Subjekt heißt Virginia. Das ist halt so dieser Mob, den man in der Babyhöhle antrifft. Das heißt, die Virginia, die wir wahrscheinlich im zweiten Teil sehen, ist wahrscheinlich eine schwächere Variante von dem hier. Oder I guess eine ziemlich gelungene Version halt mit nur einem Bein extra, aber ansonsten gleiche Körperform wie sonst ein anderer Mensch.
Feeble and dying, it almost seemed as if the obelisk went too far in instilling them with life. producing unintended outcomes.
Ja, die sieht man unten
The
aber.
children underwent extreme and bizarre mutations, growing and morphing into unrecognizable forms within
Wie das zum Beispiel, ja, voilà.
minutes. The researchers were, however, making progress. Matthew was able to devise a conduit of sorts, one that would channel only the necessary amount of power from the obelisk into a recipient. The most recent subject of the refined treatment appeared healthy and stable, although he did suffer occasional seizures.
Okay.
Despite this
Anfälle wie Timmy am Ende des Spiels.
potential side effect, Matthew was enheartened as he was very close to saving his daughter. Matthew didn't understand why his wife, Jessica, gave into fear when seeing the results of the first trials. He warned her, told her not to keep Megan from him and the treatment that would save her life.
Oh, Restraining, oder? Okay.
But Jessica wouldn't relent, so he had to act, had to remove her from the picture.
Oh, damn. Er hat seine Frau ermordet. Oh, shit.
As he reassured himself that it
Und wie es da stand gerade, hat sie erstochen anscheinend. Damn.
would all be worth it, Matthew heard a commotion coming from the subject observation rooms. Rushing past Megan, he witnessed a large, flailing mutant in the room where the most recent subject of the obelisk was being held. Before anyone could react, it crashed through the reinforced glass, knocking him down.
Damn.
Just before being bowled over, Matthew looked at Megan, saw the terrified look on her face. The last thing he remembered before his world went dark was a young girl's horrific scream, suddenly cut short.
Und da war er selbst tot,
Following the
oder?
tragedy, Matthew began to unravel.
Ah, ne, er ist noch am
He
Leben.
assured himself, she's not dead, she is sleeping. Don't be
Das heißt, die Tochter ist gestorben, er nicht.
afraid, just believe. Project Jarius could bring Megan back even from her comatose state. But time was no longer on Matthew's side, and there were no more children to trade for Megan's life. Matthew was considering how he would acquire another child to sacrifice as he oversaw a test fire of what they were calling the Power Obelisk. Sahara leadership was discussing the possible weaponization of the Power Obelisk, which could lead to lucrative contracts with government agencies. To that end, Sasha Bond had asked Matthew to confirm the Power Obelisk's suspected ability to bring down hostile aircraft.
Ja, das sehen wir
As
auch.
he witnessed the test, Matthew had a thought. He could locate a passenger plane with viable children on board and
Und zum Absturz bringen, genau wie uns es auch passiert. Und wir am Ende des Spiels können entscheiden oder nicht.
bring it down. It was morally reprehensible, not to mention against company policy, but it was the only way to save Megan.
Was Liebe einen nicht machen lässt, ne? Damn. Und zack. Chapter 2, das ist jetzt fängt an, unsere Kampagne an.
Eric LeBlanc stared at the empty seat next to Timmy, where the boy's mother should have been were it not for the tragic accident.
Oh.
Eric had money. His time spent starring on a reality survival TV show made sure of that. But no amount of wealth would bring his wife back. Still, his son was happy and healthy, and for that he was thankful.
Ja, wenigstens das.
Feeling nostalgic, Eric reached over and picked up the survival guide he co-authored with Sam Sound. The plane rumbled as the fastened seatbelt light
Ja, deswegen, okay, erklärt ein bisschen, warum er so gut zurechtkommt, I guess. Oder I guess wir werden es ja dann spielen. Er hatte so Erfahrungen, so etwas.
turned on, and a flight
Zum Glück.
attendant warned about an oncoming zone of turbulence over the intercom. A sound of
Sein
hissing
eigener Guide hat er eigentlich benutzt. Krank.
electrical static passed over Eric, and he felt his hair stand on end as the plane lurched towards the ground. Timmy awoke with a start and began looking around as he clutched his toy in both hands. As the front half of the fuselage tore away, Eric placed a bracing arm against Timmy's chest while he held on for dear life with the other. What remained of the plane hit the ground and continued skidding for a few seconds before coming to a sudden stop. Eric's momentum carried him forward, and he collided headfirst with the seat in front of him.
Ja, und ist also eingeschlafen Tisch.
Eric stirred in
Ohnmächtig.
darkness. Vision clearing, he made out the figure of a red man standing over his son's limp form. Casually, the red man knelt down and lifted Timmy from the floor. The effort on Eric's part proved to be more than he could take, and as his consciousness began falling away, he saw the red man turn and leave.
Ja.
An indeterminable amount of time later, Eric finally came to. With Timmy's kidnapping fresh on his mind, he got to his feet and began surveying his surroundings. Oddly, none of the other passengers, dead or alive, were present. The only body was that of a flight attendant splayed out on the center aisle floor, axe buried in her gut.
Yep.
Eric pulled the axe free, tended to his injuries, and set off in search of the Red Man and his son. It wasn't long before Eric got the prickling sensation that he was being watched. Soon after, the peninsula's locals made their presence known. The gaunt, sallow, and severely inhuman ones were rabid and would attack until killed. Beyond that, the morbid effigies decorating the locals' camps betrayed their cannibalistic tendencies. Some of the
Definitiv.
cannibals were better organized and fed, and would adorn their skin with religious symbols. Eric found that these organized cannibals respected and kept their distance from those that posed a genuine threat.
Wie wir zum Beispiel,
Although
ja.
he fit into this category, Eric would come to realize that unfortunately, the same could not be said for his fellow passengers.
Ja, man hatte die Passagierliste und man kann sie alle entdecken halt. Und ja, alle tot, glaube ich. Mit Ausnahme halt von uns und Timmy.
That fact was made evident by freshly disembodied remains scattered throughout the island. However, Eric did find something to give him hope. It was a crayon drawing that he immediately recognized as his son's. Tracking the movements of the Red Man led Eric along the coastline. One of the earliest clues he found was a group of shipping containers, many featuring the logo of Sahara Therapeutics.
Yep.
Eric had also thought of the fact that there were very few cannibals near the Red Man's tracks. Happening upon a bucket of red paint, Eric tried it on for himself and found it to be an excellent deterrent from unwanted attention.
Ich habe das manchmal benutzt und nicht oft.
Continuing on, Eric eventually spotted the Red Man aboard a yacht just off the coast. While swimming over, Eric swore the Red Man descended into the yacht's cabin, but upon arrival, he found it completely abandoned. He did, however, find clues.
Okay.
Several hand-drawn sketches of an obelisk, a unicorn drawing by a girl named Megan Cross, and a Polaroid photo of a multi-legged mutant that Eric would later learn was termed Virginia.
Und ich kann mir vorstellen, dass vielleicht dieser rote Mann der Vater ist von Megan. Dass das seine Form inzwischen ist.
At that moment, these were all just disparate pieces of a puzzle that Eric could not yet fit together. Eric continued his pursuit of the Red Man, which led him into the peninsula's interconnected cave system. Underground, Eric encountered the stuff of nightmares. The mutant from the Polaroid alongside other unique and disturbing monsters.
Oh ja.
All appeared to be the results of experiments gone horribly wrong, patchworks of multiple beings dubiously sewn together. Eric also observed ancient yet advanced looking structures along his journey. In addition, Eric found a photo of the obelisk he had previously only seen a drawing of, and it certainly appeared to be of similar design.
Yep, definitiv.
Oddly enough, it wasn't the mutants but the clues that the Red Man left for Eric, like a trail of breadcrumbs, that perplexed him most.
Also bisher wirkt so, als wäre dann halt Forest 1 so eine Geschichte von Vatern, die nur ihr Kind wollen retten. Wir haben einerseits wir als den Main-Charakter halt, wo Timmy wollen retten, und wir haben halt einerseits diesen Wissenschaftler, der wohl nur seine Tochter will retten. Und die gehen zu jeweils Maßen wie kein anderer.
The occasional drawing from Timmy or piece of Timmy's toy let Eric know that he was on the right track, and that for the time being, Timmy was alive and well. Along the way, Eric found essential equipment to aid in his exploration. Some of the clues were very specific, such as the Polaroid photos with handwritten notes in the Red Man's signature color. They directed Eric to a Sahara Therapeutics keycard.
Ja. Was steht da? Karl Thomas, okay.
And yet, Eric also got the sense that the Red Man was mentally unstable from the ramblings of a madman written in red paint.
Ein eifersüchtiger Gott bestraft den Fehler eines Elternteils auf An ihren Kindern oder so, keine Ahnung.
on torn Bible pages. A cave drawing of the red man being worshipped, if it was a self-portrait, also indicated a sort of god complex. Upon discovering an autopsy report for a Jessica Cross, along with a restraining order for a Matthew Cross to stay away from both Jessica and Megan Cross, a large portion of the puzzle assembled in Eric's mind. Matthew Cross is the red man. He worked for Sahara, murdered his wife to gain sole custody of Megan, and somehow she died. Eric had a sneaking suspicion that many of the corpses he encountered on the peninsula were the result of Matthew's efforts, and a knot formed in his stomach as he contemplated what Matthew was planning to do with Timmy.
Ja.
Around that time, Eric found a major clue from Timmy, a drawing of the
Das fette Loch. Ui.
sinkhole at the center of the peninsula. Delving into the sinkhole, Eric hurried through a series of caves and tunnels, passing more ancient architecture along the way. He found
Das Labor.
another drawing from Timmy just ahead of a modern vault door. With a quick scan of the keycard, the door to Sahara Therapeutics' underground research facility slowly swung open.
Und somit sind wir auch im Endgame. Okay.
The reality of what lay inside would haunt Eric's worst nightmares for years to come. Dozens of sick children that were promised treatment and instead were
Stimmt, jetzt muss ich mir so die also die Wandmalereien ansehen. Stimmt. Das war für Kinder hier. Oh, damn. Da sieht man mal, wie düster es wurde, ne? Wir haben es nicht mehr gemerkt. Also, das Spiel probiert ja auch nicht zu verstecken, aber man kämpft gegen manche Wesen da, die sind ein bisschen horrormäßig. Aber holy shit.
subjected to cruel experimentation involving the resurrection obelisk. Damning evidence that proved Matthew led the researchers, signs that Matthew's only goal was to save his doomed daughter, and a notice of termination that failed to stop Matthew from realizing his own goal.
Heimat. Your employment of Samara Therapeutics is terminated for unethical, inappropriate use of company equipment. Okay, er wurde halt gefeuert. Aber scheint trotzdem weiter sein Ding gemacht zu haben, weil ja.
And more than likely spurred his sabotage and murderous rampage through the now defunct facility. As Eric mulled over these sickening details, he nearly tripped on a box of crayons. It read property of Megan, but was noticeably absent of any crayons. Finally, Eric found what he was both hoping and dreading, the resurrection obelisk.
Und somit auch Timmy.
Prying the device open, Eric stared at his son's lifeless body, impaled upon many spikes.
Ja, da, weil wahrscheinlich der rote Mann probiert hat,
Tenderly,
Megan zu
he
retten.
dislodged Timmy and pulled him free from the cruel contraption.
Das ist einfach wirklich aufgespießt, ey. Ein kleines Kind.
Eric placed his son on a nearby bed and rested the rebuilt toy in the boy's arms. Looking around, Eric felt a desperate hope well up as his survival instincts kicked in. From everything he saw in the facility, the obelisk could be used to revive Timmy.
Aber konnte es nicht direkt, weil er Mengen braucht. Das ist der eigentliche Plan vom
As
Wissenschaftler.
expected, the device required a subject to be placed within the obelisk. Eric surmised that Timmy's life had been traded for that of Megan Cross. One of her signed drawings on the ground nearby confirmed his suspicions, and he was confident the trail of blood leading deeper into the facility would show the way to her.
Eingetauscht.
As Eric followed the trail, he tried to work out, with little success, how he would explain to Megan that she needed to give Timmy's life back to him. Further along, Eric found another one of Megan's drawings taped to a wall. Her depiction of the Red Man with the label Daddy told Eric two things.
Stimmt.
First, the Red Man was
Ich hab die Verbindung nie
indeed Matthew
gemacht.
Cross,
Ja.
and second, Megan saw him for the monster he was. Eric finished the thought as he entered a large atrium and spotted a small girl in the distance. Megan, feet and hands drenched with blood, continued playing with her toy plane as Eric approached.
Hat sie ihren
She
Vater
turned her
ermordet?
head, revealing a bloody face. Then she reenacted the plane crash for which she should have had no knowledge of and pointed a knowing finger at Eric.
Oh.
Suddenly,
Stimmt.
Megan clutched at her chest and let out an ear-piercing wail before collapsing.
Bevor die Scheiße losgeht, ja. Und dann kam der feinde Boss halt, ne. Hat nicht so geklappt.
Eric stumbled back as the girl began thrashing and horrific mutated arms emerged from her face. Through a combination of ingenuity, skill, and luck, Eric brought the monster down and freed Megan from its grasp. Unfortunately, it appeared that the trauma to the girl was too much, and Eric carried her body back towards the resurrection obelisk. He placed Megan into the obelisk, but it rejected her, only accepting living sacrifices.
Ja, weil
As
sie tot
Megan
ist.
fell forward, she dropped a gold keycard. Eric picked it up out of habit, but was beside himself. He questioned where Matthew was, wanted to find him, and ask him if it was all worth it. Eric wouldn't need to look that far, as he found Matthew, or at least his corpse, in a nearby office.
That is
The
that.
mini crayons sticking
Huh.
from various puncture wounds, along with the disturbing message drawn on the whiteboard behind him, left no doubt as to the perpetrator of the act. Eric mused that Megan somehow learned or understood the awful things her father did to bring her back. That, or she was just terrified of the monster he appeared to be. Regardless, something drove her to kill him, and it didn't look as if he even tried to fight back. Eric's thoughts were interrupted when he spotted a peculiar note on a nearby desk.
Ja.
It was an email discussing a certain device's ability to bring down airplanes.
Mhm. Ja, dann kommen
Whatever
wir
this
gleich.
device
Okay.
was, it must have been what Matthew used to cause the plane crash that started this whole ordeal. Pulling the gold keycard from his pocket, Eric quickly located the door it opened and went through it. He wasn't seriously considering using the device himself, but all the same, Eric wanted to see it with his own two eyes. The normal path ahead was blocked, but Eric made his way through an alternative cavernous
Durch die
route.
Höhle da, ja.
The rock tunnels opened into a large cylindrical chamber with what appeared to be a stone cradle for a since-removed artifact at its center. The ancient struts reinforcing the chamber walls gave credence to this line of thinking, and the dozens of scorched remains lining the cavern alluded to the power of
Wird
the
angerufen, einen
artifact
Moment.
it once contained. Eric continued moving forward, eventually arriving at a single elevator. It brought him to the observation level of the facility, which crested the peninsula's tallest mountain and looked out over the forest below. Eric entered the large room that contained the second device, also known as the Power Obelisk.
Ja, kennen wir ja
He
natürlich.
moved towards the desk on the opposite side as the artifact whirred overhead.
Und da kommt die Entscheidung.
Approaching the desk, Eric stared down at the touchscreen. Most of the work had already been done.
Ich guess, der Vater überlässt dem anderen Vater die Entscheidung. Machst du das gleiche wie ich? Oder bist du nicht so ein Monster wie ich und lässt dein Kind sterben für das Wohl von mehr Menschen? Okay, jetzt mit diesen Details versteckt das, finde ich, ein bisschen die Story von Force. Man muss dafür aber halt auch wirklich die Notizen durchlesen, die Welt sich anschauen und alles. Und dann sieht man das. Okay, das ist aber nice, wenn aber an sich die Beantworten da sind, aber man halt es suchen muss. Man wird dafür belohnt, halt das Spiel sich anzuschauen.
Target was acquired, and it had 3 viable matches to save Timmy. All Eric needed to do was activate it. He had fooled himself into believing that he wouldn't do it, but now that the choice presented itself, Eric pressed the button. A low din resounded from the power obelisk, and its whirring intensified as it began shining brighter. The power built to a fever pitch, then burst forth as a wave of highly energetic electricity.
Jetzt habe ich das richtige
Eric's hair
Ending, also
stood on
kein
end
Ending.
as, once again, he heard the hissing static prelude to a plane crash. The whirring of the power obelisk was drowned out by various sounds as the disabled airliner screamed past the observation deck, clipping its wing
Zack.
on the shatterproof glass.
Das hat ein krankes Glas, ey, dass das abwirft. The Scared Boy, Chapter 3. Ich nehme an, das ist jetzt...
Following the crash, Eric did what was
Ja.
necessary to bring Timmy back and repress the memories of it. Eric wrote a book about his ordeal, but many believed it to be cathartic and creative in nature, blurring the lines of truth and fiction.
Okay.
The
Also, wahrscheinlich die meisten zweifeln an, was ihm passiert ist, aber vielleicht auch teils dadurch, weil er vielleicht ein bisschen da teils abgeändert hat oder so, maybe.
father and son duo gained notoriety and were invited onto many TV talk shows. During such an occasion, Eric was painfully reminded that his son's condition was tenuous at best. Although Timmy never fully transformed like Megan, he would suffer occasional episodes of the same severe seizures that preceded her ultimate fate.
Was wir gesehen haben in Dings, in den Filmen, also den Aufnahmen da, bei dem anderen Kind.
Timmy was also left with a permanent scar on his forehead from the resurrection obelisk, but something else had changed in Timmy when he was brought back. He now had a keen sense that multiple beings lived within his human frame.
Mehrere Wesen, interesting. Könnte das noch vielleicht, also ich greife jetzt schon ein bisschen vor, muss ich sagen, könnte das auch erklären, warum wir so 3 Schatten oder irgendwie so Wesen sehen, wenn wir in diesem Würfel sind am Ende von Sons of the Forest? Könnte das erklären, dass mit diesen mehreren Wesen gerade was erwähnt wird?
And copious amounts of drugs and alcohol were required to keep them contained. As Timmy aged, he became fixated on the theory of parallel universes, devoting his time to its study.
Okay.
He believed that the resurrection obelisk could interact with parallel universes and that its effects on human subjects were a result of that interaction. Over the next decade, Timmy published a book on parallel universes and continued working with his father to locate new artifacts that were of the same origin as those on the peninsula.
Was dann zu Sons of the Forest geführt auch
Eventually,
hat.
the pair discovered the whereabouts of a new ancient artifact located on an island known as Site 2.
Site 2,
Timmy
wow,
believed
kreativ.
Site 2 held the key to alleviating the resurrection obelisk's unwanted side effects, but until reaching it, he would struggle to keep control.
Ja, man sieht's ja auch hier. Und jetzt Sons of the Forest, ne? The Mercenary, schon wieder.
Sons of the Forest starts simply enough. On the surface, it appears that the Puftons, a family of billionaires, bought the Site 2 island and turned it into a vacation destination.
Ist nicht gut
with
ausgegangen.
luxury bunkers for a privileged few to live in.
Deswegen die
According to a
ganzen Bunker, ja.
brochure, one of these bunkers is named Hollow Springs, and it can be viewed from the outside within one of Site 2's many cave systems. In any case, something has gone wrong. The 3 Puftons on the island, Edward, Barbara, and their daughter, Virginia, along with all other Puff Corp employees, have been radio silent for around 7
Stimmt, jetzt merke ich das. Das ist ja die, wo... Oh lol, wie dumm von mir. Ich hab das nie gecheckt. Stimmt, das ist die, wo wir sehen. Da, oh lol.
months, and are presumed either dead, missing, or worse. In response, the protagonist is hired by Puff Corp and sent to the Site 2 island as a member of one of 2 small teams. Not much is known about the protagonist, but given his tattoo, we might infer that he is a demon-fighting mercenary prepared to handle a worst-case scenario.
Yep.
This is exactly what happens as an unknown attacker or group of attackers shoots the Puff Corp helicopters out of the sky.
Ja.
Whether it be fate or luck, the protagonist survives the rough landing, but is briefly knocked unconscious.
Yep.
Upon awakening, he sees a mysterious individual wearing a silver jacket glowering over him. It seems plausible that Silver Jacket had something to do with the 2 helicopters being shot down.
Ach, das ist doch
Silver
der Typ da,
Jacket
ja.
points the business end of a revolver at the protagonist's face, but after a moment decides to send him back into the realm of dreams rather than end his life.
Das ist doch der jemand vom
The
Ende der
protagonist would
Endbosses.
come to learn the name of Silver Jacket, but more on that later. Coming back to consciousness for a second time, the protagonist discovers he wasn't the only one spared. A dazed and deafened member of the team, Kelvin, also survived the crash.
Yep.
This is where the protagonist's journey begins, stranded on a mysterious island with nothing but a small survival kit to accomplish his objective: find the Puftons and get them off the island. Looking at the GPS, there are several marked locations. The protagonist comes to learn that the green points of interest are subterranean facilities built by Puff Corp.
Ja.
Meanwhile, the purple icons are GPS locators worn by deceased Puff Corp operatives.
Ja, wenn hat man
It
ganz
would
viel
appear that the
gefunden.
protagonist is not amongst the first individuals hired by Puff Corp to investigate the happenings at Site 2.
Ja, aber zum Glück die letzten, wie es aussieht, bei Force 2. Ja, ich greife jetzt wirklich viel vor. Und ja, diese haben wir auch oft gesehen im Projekt, Dings, beim Erkunden von der Insel.
While exploring the island for clues, the protagonist encounters a young woman in a swimsuit with an extra arm and leg.
Ah, steht ja auch
He
ein extra Arm,
recognized
stimmt.
her as Virginia Puffton,
Ja, die Tochter.
daughter of Edward and Barbara Puffton. Despite the obvious physical mutations, Virginia is friendly enough, if
Ja.
not a little timid. She observes the protagonist from a distance and runs when approached by him. This is in contrast to the island's many tribal inhabitants, which quickly begin hunting him. When the protagonist begins delving into caves, looking for clues and equipment that will help further his objective, he is confronted by a waking nightmare, starting with cadaverous humanoids wearing featureless faces, followed by hobbling torsos vertically bisected to form gaping maws with protruding fingers in place of teeth.
Yep. Wo ich mich frage dann, ob dieses Artefakt dann, wahrscheinlich was ja wieder verantwortlich ist, dass die Menschen so aussehen, ob das dann halt den gleichen Ursprung hat wie halt das andere Artefakt, ne? Warum es her ist, so von einem Paralleluniversum oder Gott weiß was, oder halt von dieser Alien-Stadt, die wir am Ende von Force 2 sehen.
They would often spew viscous clear gunk that coated and solidified on the surrounding cave walls. But worst by far were the babies. Barely recognizable, the pint-sized mutants rolled and flung their mangled bodies at the protagonist in numbers,
Yep.
chipping away at his
Boah,
defenses.
die Babys fucken immer ab, ne?
This horror is contrasted by an abundant and alluring gold metal ore, which
Ja.
permeates many of Site 2's caves. Within the bunker where the VIP keycard is found, surveillance footage reveals a pivotal moment in the genesis of the mutants at Site 2. It shows Puff Corp executives and guests of honor all gathered in a banquet hall.
Oh.
All at once, the wealthy undergo a writhing transformation, becoming the mutants that now plague the island's subterranean locales.
Ah, warum?
The
Ja, das
protagonist
hier, das kennen wir.
investigates the banquet hall, finding most of the attendees dead. However, there were two figures emerging from the water nearby.
Oh, die hat Nick besiegt halt, da
Although
waren wir nicht
horribly
dabei.
mutated, the protagonist still recognized both Edward and Barbara Puffton. They were extremely aggressive and took several loaded magazines to dispatch. Fortunately, the protagonist knew that Virginia Puffton was still alive and safely on the surface. Before leaving, the protagonist notices a magazine that spotlights a revolutionary new metal. It certainly looks like the metal he has observed within the caves of Site 2.
Ist auch
This
sehr, sehr
reveals
wichtig
another
später.
possible motive for Puff Corp's acquisition of Site 2, to extract and profit off of this extraordinary metal. Indeed, an email exchange between two Puff Corp employees confirms this suspicion. Rob Blue informs Jackson Pullett, FYI, this is what we are looking for, following the statement with a picture of the golden ore. In addition, other magazine articles refer to artifacts composed of unknown metals, hinting at a deeper conspiracy as to the significance of the golden ore, but more on that later.
Ja, später
Having
mehr.
confirmed the fates of both Barbara and Edward Puffton, the protagonist sets out to investigate the remaining Puff Corp bunkers.
Ja, davon gibt es ja 2 oder 3. Also noch mehr. Ich hab ja ein paar.
After traveling across the island, the protagonist enters a remote bunker that
Ah,
requires the
Sportzentrum,
maintenance
oder?
keycard to access. Only a short distance in, he stumbles upon a chaotic fight between a large baby-spewing mutant and a young man. The protagonist recognizes the man as Timmy LeBlanc, one of the team members that flew to Site 2 in the other Puff
Ah,
Corp
also wir sind einfach
helicopter.
komplett neuer Charakter,
Timmy
stimmt.
gained notoriety when he was saved from Site 1 during the events in the forest.
Stimmt,
Although
wir
it's
sind ja gar nicht
been more
Timmy.
than a decade, Timmy still bears the same scar on his forehead.
Macht Sinn, ja. Das
The
geht
protagonist and
schlecht
Timmy
weg.
stand off against the mutant and are eventually joined by an older man who makes his relationship to Timmy known.
Get down, son!
Der Vater.
This is Eric LeBlanc, the main protagonist from The Forest and father of Timmy. Neither of the LeBlancs are strangers to abominable mutants and strange ancient artifacts.
Yep.
A third character enters the chaotic scene. Without warning, Eric LeBlanc is shot by the individual in the silver jacket, who is accompanied by an armed escort. Moments after, the protagonist is knocked unconscious by the mutant
Ja,
behemoth.
baff. Ah, der
It's
Vater müsste
likely
überleben, ja.
that the ambushers are working for Sahara Therapeutics.
Oh, das heißt, die kommen wieder. Oh,
A
damn.
headline news story from the Sunset Times asserts that Puff Corp outbid Sahara Therapeutics for a remote island. In
Corporate
addition,
Greed,
an
Alter.
annotated stock chart indicates that following the start of the bidding war for the island, Puff Corp's market value began to grow, while that of Sahara Therapeutics plummeted. Then there are the handful of messages between Puff Corp official Jackson Pullett and Hector Leader, a possible Puff Corp spy that was sent undercover to work for Sahara Therapeutics at the Site 1 Peninsula with the goal of relaying important information back to Jackson at Site 2. Hector sends photos of 2 different artifacts found at Site 1 to Jackson and suggests that they may be related to a certain cube found at Site 2. The 2 artifacts that Hector reports on are the Resurrection Obelisk and the Power Obelisk.
Okay, Resurrection, aber das ist ein Power-Apple. Also, das hat immer irgendwie so eine Fähigkeit, wie es aussieht. Was ich mich frage, ist Dings, woher sieht man die Dokumente? Weil ich hatte ja zum Beispiel, es gab ein Achievement vor Zeit, muss man alle Notizen einsammeln, dieses eine Dokumente. Und ich kann mich nicht an die 2 erinnern hier. Außer die wurden irgendwie ja so an Wände geklatscht und man sieht sie. Oder vielleicht Dings, die sind irgendwie in den Files hinten oder so, I don't know.
Both playing pivotal roles in the events on Site 1 involving Eric and Timmy LeBlanc. If this cube is indeed a related artifact, then it is likely to possess similar properties.
Oh ja.
From these emails, 2 conclusions can be inferred. The
Ja.
first is that Puff Corp and Sahara Therapeutics have a shared history of conflict,
Yep.
centered around Site 1, Site 2, and the ancient artifacts therein.
Und wahrscheinlich auch viel mehr Standorten.
The second conclusion is that the true motive for Puff Corp's purchase of the Site 2 island was to safeguard the cube from prying Sahara eyes, while also giving themselves unrestricted access to study its capabilities and how it might be utilized to their advantage. In addition, the protagonist had discovered the identity of the man in the silver jacket. His name is Jianyu Zhang, and he was the department assistant for Puff Corp security operations on the Site 2 island.
Okay.
However, in another email from Hank Keys to Jackson Pullett, Hank warned Jackson about Jianyu's potential collusion with Sahara Therapeutics. Given his employment with Puff Corp,
Also es scheint so, als würde es wieder zurückführen zu Dings Sahara Corp. Huh, interesting, okay. Ich dachte, dass Dings Sahara Corp eigentlich sehr Geschichte würde sein nach dem ganzen Verfahren von dieser Situation von Forster 1. Aber anscheinend ja nicht. Ja, gut.
Jianyu would be perfectly positioned to sabotage their efforts in studying the cube. It is reasonable to conclude that Jianyu and his fellow interlopers are agents of Sahara and have either caused the catastrophe at Site 2 or are at least interfering with Puff Corp's investigations into it.
Okay.
Returning to the protagonist, he survives the behemoth mutant attack by yet another miracle, awakening to find the room deserted and the doorway he entered through completely blocked by the now dead mutant.
Zum Glück ist der Tote
Descending through the bunker, searching for an alternative escape, the protagonist finds a couple printed emails that reference the cube. One mentions that the artifact causes a brief dimensional switch. Another has a typed entry that is summarized rather bluntly by a written note, safe in cube. The protagonist also stumbles across a curious suit of armor that appears to have been forged from the revolutionary gold metal found throughout Site 2's caves.
Oh, okay. Okay, das ist, glaube ich, diese Dokumente, die ich vorher nicht erkannt habe. Ich glaube, das ist von einem früheren Bild, beziehungsweise einer früheren Version von der Sons of Force, weil die goldene Rüstung haben Nick und ich ja nicht, Dings, da auf dem Sofa gefunden. Das haben wir auf diesem Raumschiff gefunden.
Either it was created by Puff Corp or it was yet another recovered artifact. Regardless, it could prove useful, so the protagonist stowed it in his pack before continuing on and finding a way out of the bunker.
The Cube. Okay, jetzt kommen wir wahrscheinlich zum Finale da schon, oder wie?
Days pass as the protagonist exhausts all other leads. He eventually befriends Virginia Puffton, who shows a proclivity for ballet. Earlier, the protagonist discovered Edward Puffton's will, which left the entirety of the Puffton estate to Virginia, should she survive.
No.
He shows the document to Virginia and informs her of her parents' unfortunate demise. Virginia proves to be made of tougher stuff though, and even has a knack for shooting multiple guns at once.
Yep.
Before leaving Site 2, the protagonist aims to discover the source of the mutants running amok. Just over 2 weeks since his arrival at Site 2, the protagonist enters the last bunker marked on his GPS.
Den Bunker da,
Deep in
okay.
the bunker, he discovers what appears to be a young girl's room.
Stimmt.
The point shoes, along with the small ballet stage and bar, indicate that this room likely belonged to
Ich
Virginia
wollte gerade,
Puffton.
stimmt, das ist Virginia dann.
Logically, the private collection of paintings and decadent abode at the base of the bunker could only belong to Edward and
Ich
Barbara
wollte gerade
Puffton.
sagen, die Puffton-Familie.
The pieces of artwork on display are expertly painted and all feature the same subject. While the surroundings change, the golden cube remains as a constant. Upon further investigation, the protagonist discovers that something broke into the Puffton's bunker bathroom. Stepping through the steam, he emerges into a small cave and discovers a gold door with exotic patterns and a hand-shaped seal. Following his intuition, he dons the suit of golden armor and lays his hand within the seal. Upon contact, a group of discordant chimes resound from the doors. There's a click, followed by the loud and drawn-out sound of metal grinding against rock as the doors slowly swing open.
Also entweder ist es nur wegen dem Storytelling so und hat ausgelassen, dass man halt die eine Rüstung da auf Gold muss upgraden, oder zu dem Zeitpunkt war das nicht so, dass man dieses Gold muss machen. Was ich komisch finde, dass man das nachträglich schon eingefügt hat. I wonder why.
Carefully, the protagonist makes his way into the cavern. The air is stagnant and polluted by the acrid odor of brimstone. An orange glow can be seen in the distance, but before he can get close enough to make out the source, a low guttural hiss emerges from the shadows, giving him pause. The source of the noise stepped into the light. At first, the protagonist mistook the monster for another mutant, but something was different about this creature. It didn't share the disheveled and haphazard appearance of the mutants. Rather, it was organized and purpose-built. Two memories flitted through the protagonist's mind. During his first day on the island, he stumbled upon a holy cross. Because of his limited arsenal at the time, he foolishly attempted to use the cross against the mutants. Of course, it didn't work. The idea was utter lunacy. But then came the other, more recent memory. It was of a scribbled note he found in the Puffton's abode, mere minutes before discovering the golden door.
Ja.
It stated rather simply, "Crosses burn demons."
Demons. Warte, ich krieg grad Dings geantwortet für meine Note da. Entschuldigung! Alright, weiter.
Fishing through his pack, the protagonist pulled out the cross and raised it
Oh
towards
lol,
the
das war
lunging
komplett anders
demon.
früher, okay.
It staggered back as if repelled by an invisible force and bursted into flames. Moving forward, he found the source of the orange glow. It was magma. Cross gripped tight, the protagonist continued making steady progress through the personal slice of hell. Further on, he plucked a hand-drawn diagram from a skeleton.
Ja,
A
okay.
note in the top left stated, "Cube activates every 8 cycles." The protagonist recognized the diagram as resembling a moon calendar, which he had seen on a magazine cover elsewhere on the island. He read that one moon cycle is roughly 29 or 30 days. Perhaps those were the cycles that the note was referring to. Thinking back to his mission brief, he recalled that the Puftons were missing for no less than 31 weeks upon his arrival at Site 2. The protagonist quickened his pace through the magma tunnels as he did the calculations in his head. 31 weeks is enough time for a little more than 7 moon cycles.
Ja, warte.
And it had also been a couple weeks since he arrived on the island. If the cube's activation did coincide with the disappearance of the Puftons, then he may only have hours, perhaps minutes, before the cube would activate again.
Oh ja, und es war verdammt knapp.
The protagonist was moving so fast that he almost missed it. Beside a pool of lava, he found several hand-drawn notes that were in miraculously good condition given the circumstance. The one that caught his eye depicted a large cube with a written note beside it, "Stay in the cube." Reading the ominous message, the protagonist solidified his resolve. He wasn't sure what the cube's activation would do, but he was going to make sure that he was inside it when it happened. Rushing onward, the protagonist sprinted to the bottom of a magma-lit cavern.
Okay, das ist anders.
Pushing himself
Das
through a
nämlich ohne
crack in the
Timmy.
wall, he saw it, the giant golden cube. The clever Timmy LeBlanc was there too,
Und der war
and he
schon direkt
waved
da.
the protagonist over. A laptop was in Timmy's hands with a large countdown on display.
Ja.
It would hit 0 in less than a minute.
War
The
ich ganz knapp
protagonist
da.
was just in time. As the cube began to close, the protagonist's companions barely slipped in behind him. They were followed closely by Jian Yu, but he was too late and the cube
Also
shut him out.
Jian-Yu, okay.
Just like when the protagonist opened the golden door, a series of discordant chimes resounded through the cube and it began to shake, as if it were in motion. Unexpectedly, Timmy clutched his head and started to collapse. A plethora of parallel Timmys suddenly emerged, vanishing just as quickly. Timmy was still living a cursed existence due to the experiments performed on him at Site 1. And he did have plans to visit Site 2. Perhaps this, getting inside the gold cube, was his goal, as whatever the cube did to Timmy seems to have exorcised the demons from within him. As Timmy regains his composure, the cube shudders to a halt. With a flash, the cube face opposite to the one they entered through vanishes, revealing a futuristic and alien cityscape.
Ja, voilà.
As he
Das kennen wir
stood
noch.
there staring, the protagonist felt the golden armor begin humming, resonating with the cube. It is unclear whether it was the protagonist's gesture, or if it was just a matter of time, but the view of the future cityscape briefly flickers, then vanishes, replaced by a rocky cave wall before the cube shuts altogether. It would appear that the note on the artifact causing a brief dimensional switch was accurate. Turning around, the original side the protagonist entered through opens back up, revealing what was once Jian Yu, but has since been transformed by the cube into a writhing, mutated
Stimmt, das
mass.
ist also diese Mutant. Ich dachte nämlich,
From
es
this,
wäre
it can
Timmy in
be
seiner
deduced
Mutantenform.
that the cube's activation was responsible for the catastrophe at Site 2 and disappearance of the Puffins those 8 moon cycles ago.
Okay.
Virginia also appears to have been affected by the cube's activation, as it causes her to stumble and faint.
Oh, scheiße.
However, she is not healed in the same sense that Timmy was, and perhaps this indicates a fundamental difference between her mutations and Timmy's affliction.
Anderen Effekten.
Barely escaping with his life, the protagonist is left with a final choice: to leave with the LeBlancs and his companions, or to stay on the island, continue fighting the demons that inhabit it, and solve the mystery of the cube.
Die Zukunft, okay.
It is likely that more major events will be added to the Sons of the Forest story, as we are still left with many questions.
Ist es ja auch, weil wir sehen aber, es sind Unterschiede zu dem, was zum Beispiel Nico und ich erlebt haben. Weil zum Beispiel, Timi hat uns die ganze Zeit geholfen in der Höhle. Wir haben einerseits sehr viele Sachen mit Midas bekommen, halt, also dem König, also Kurzfassung ist ein König gewesen, der wollte Reichtum und hat dann gewünscht, dass alles, das Anfangs zu Gold wird. Klingt mal als erst ganz gut, aber ist nicht so gut gegangen, ist damit geendet, dass er seine Tochter auszusehen gefasst hat und die wurde dann zu Gold. Scheiße gelaufen. Ja. So kann man es grob zusammenfassen, ne? Und ja, das ist sehr viel mehr präsent. Generell dieses Ding von Gold machen, deswegen vielleicht auch diese goldene Rüstung da verzaubern, halt, diese normale Raumschiff-Dings. Generell das mit dem man hat natürlich jetzt diese Alien-Stadt und alles so, aber jetzt dieses Raumschiff, glaube ich, gab es zum Beispiel nicht oder so und so Sachen. Das heißt, da scheint irgendetwas geändert geworden zu sein. Also sie wollen, glaube ich, mehr in diese Weltraumsache reingehen und deswegen haben sie das im fertigen Bild von The Forest, also Sons of the Forest, halt mehr hier herausstechen lassen, wie es aussieht. Und auch halt der Unterschied, dass wie die Szene mit Timmy aussah, aber das ist eigentlich schon sich sonst gleich. Dieser riesen Bosskampf mit dem Dämonen, da gab es zum Beispiel da jetzt nicht. Ich bin auch gerade zu überlegen. Generell das ganze Artefakt da ist ja abwesend, da mit dem wir uns ja am Ende konnten teleportieren und so. Das ist auch abwesend. Interesting.
Some of these questions are simple, such as the identity of the protagonist. He looks like Carl Planter, pictured on the maintenance keycard. But that doesn't really fit in with the story.
Okay.
If the protagonist was Carl Planter, why wasn't he on the island when the first catastrophe occurred?
Fair point.
Or at the very least, why didn't he have his own keycard? There are also questions regarding how long the Puffdens were on the island before the catastrophe occurred,
Gute
and
Frage.
just how Timmy managed to beat us to the cube, getting past the gold door and a horde of demons.
Aber das hat sich in der Finalversion, also ich glaube mal, es gibt keine Updates mehr, deswegen sage ich Finalversion, von Son of the Forest ja ergänzt, also erklärt. Er ist mit uns dann heruntergegangen und alles so. Er stand ja am goldenen Tor und ist mit uns zusammen reingegangen. Das hat sich ja erst geklärt.
We also don't know how Eric LeBlanc survived outside of the cube when it activated, nor how
Stimmt.
anyone survived Jian Yu's ambush at the bunker battle.
Stimmt,
The
das ist
fact
ein
that
bisschen weird.
Jian Yu had multiple opportunities to kill off the series' most important characters and didn't requires more explanation.
Ja.
There is also this page with symbols and corresponding numbers, and I have not found these symbols anywhere else in the game. There are more nuanced questions, such as where the true demons come from, why people outside the cube turn into mutants, what the range of the cube's mutating capabilities when activated is, and if it can be augmented or suppressed.
Gute
Also,
Frage,
I
ja.
would like to know the complete story of Miles Goldstein.
Oh,
We know he
side
was
character.
involved in setting up Site 2 as a sort of resort for the rich,
Den
being
kannst du
the
nicht mehr
man
erinnern.
behind the construction of
Ich glaube, der
golf
wurde komplett
courses
entfernt,
and
oder?
acquisition of related equipment, but we
Oder?
haven't seen a satisfying
Oder vielleicht doch,
conclusion to
doch
this
Miles.
story.
Doch, vielleicht. Weil die Notiz kann
Similarly,
ich auch,
Sam
actually.
Sound is a very enigmatic character that appears to be behind many creative works throughout
Okay.
both games. He co-authored Eric's survival guide and authored several other works, such as The Dark-Haired Man and SKS. We see
Okay.
his name as part of Sound Publishing, and he is also the owner of Sound Records, a music
Interesting.
publishing group in Sons of the Forest.
Interesting, okay.
The many references make him out to be a wealthy, powerful, and influential character. All that said, we haven't seen a single written communication from him and know very little about him. Then there is speculation to be had on the many references to holograms and virtual reality, giving rise to the question of whether the events that take place in the game were all just part of a simulation.
Das wäre krank.
I think there is a lot of room to interpret and speculate when it
Yeah.
comes to this game's story and ending, so share your thoughts in the comments section. This is a new style of video I am trying, so please let me know if you liked
Okay.
it and would like to see similar style videos covering other games.
Ich frage mich
I
mal, wie alt ist
also
das
want
Video?
to take a
3
moment
Jahre.
to thank
Okay.
my collaborator and good friend Crazy Flips, who provided invaluable help in researching Sons of the Forest and
Okay.
the Forest and in designing the assets used in this video. If you want to see more great content, you can head over to my channel, and if you're new, consider subscribing. You're helping me feed my cat. Her name's Marshmallow.
Süß.
Have a great day. If you're here today, have a great Monday and a great week. And
Ja,
as
mehr am
always,
Montag.
thanks for
Pass auf.
watching.
Okay, das war ein sehr, sehr nice Video. Okay, also es ist nicht so aktuell, weil Dings, was ist ein Ding mit der Katze gerade? Weil ja, einiges noch geändert wurde seitdem. Deswegen, da wird noch ein bisschen, jetzt ein paar Sachen anders sein. Aber ansonsten sind aber wirklich Großteile gut ähnlich noch. Es ist halt wirklich ein paar Sachen mit der Story sind ein bisschen weird halt. Fühlt sich ein bisschen all over the place irgendwie. Und ich habe es ja auch, glaube ich, gesagt, das Spiel lässt sich eher besser spielen für Dings halt für die Story. Für das Sandboxen und alles. So, da finde ich, ist halt sein Mainpunkt. Die Story ist, ja, kann man so einen kleinen Zusatztrick machen. Aber muss jetzt nicht der Hauptfokus sein. Aber ich glaube, sie probieren ein bisschen mehr mit die Storys reinzugehen. Und zumal sie jetzt mit diesem Alien-Setting, was wir vor uns 3 haben, haben sie zumal mit dem Finale, bis der finalen Version von Dings, The Sons of the Force auch mehr reingedrückt. Mit zum Beispiel dem Raumschiff, den wir da finden. Auch mit Gold, mit Midas halt und alles. Also das wird sehr, sehr interessant. Ich bin sehr gespannt, was sie da zu Raum wirft. Ich habe ein bisschen Angst, dass es ein bisschen clanky wird und Dings. Eine Early Access Hölle wird und alles. Also, ich weiß nicht, ob es mir direkt wert kaufen, wenn es rauskommt. Vielleicht nicht ein bisschen abwarten oder so. I don't know. Oder wir können es halt auch kaufen, sobald es rauskommt. Sofern es nicht irgendwie ein absolutes Chaos ist von einem Game. Und ja, warum klippt schon wieder die Musik? Alter, was ist denn da los? Außer es ist irgendwie das Video selbst, was sehr seltsam wäre. Oh. Mach ich eben das hier an. Auf jeden Fall halt Dings, was wollte ich gerade sagen? Jetzt hab ich den Faden verloren, danke. Ja. Bin mal gespannt auf jeden Fall, weil es kann auch gut sein, dass halt wirklich extremste Performance-Issues und vielleicht auch so haben am Anfang, deswegen Müssen wir mal abwarten, die Forest 3 wird. Also ich glaube, wir werden uns mal antun. Aber ja, schauen wir mal, wie es ausgeht. Aber ja, dann danke fürs Zuschauen. Ich hoffe, es hat euch gefallen. Ist nicht so ganz angehört von jetzt wahrscheinlich, was die Story am Ende ist, weil jetzt noch ein paar Sachen ja abgeändert wurden und alles so. Und noch wahrscheinlich ein paar mehr Details und Storybeats umgeändert wurden oder halt gehighlightet wurden oder wichtiger wurden und alles so. Und ja. Aber ich glaube, grob, zumal es Forest 1, ich glaube, da ist die Story jetzt nichts wirklich geändert geworden. Also da haben wir wirklich alles verstanden. Also da haben wir, glaube ich, alles gut verstanden. Also ja, dann danke fürs Zuschauen. Ich hoffe, es gefallen. Man sieht dann tief in den Internets. Bye bye.